Hello, my name is Liam. I'm 26 years old and have been leading a quiet, solitary life in a modest rental house on the outskirts of Denver, Colorado. It's not much, just a two-bedroom place with a small kitchen, dark wooden floors that creak beneath my feet, and a front porch where I've hung warm yellow lights to make the evenings feel a bit less lonely. I moved here right after finishing college, making ends meet with my job as a creative specialist at a mid-sized media company downtown. The job is all right. I come up with ad campaign ideas, edit videos, and pitch concepts in seemingly endless meetings. Honestly, it's the routine that keeps me going. Days filled with deadlines and nights spent alone with a book or an indie playlist softly playing in the background. My parents passed away in a car accident 4 years ago when I was 22. It was sudden, one of those events that completely upends your world. I have no siblings, no extended family nearby, just me figuring out how to keep moving forward. I don't talk about it much. It's easier to bury it under work and small habits like cooking simple meals for myself or wandering the nearby trails on weekends. Tonight was no exception. It was a Saturday, and I had just finished a late dinner I threw together. Tuna salad on toasted bread. Nothing remarkable. I was standing at the sink, rinsing the plate under the faucet, the water running steady, and the faint hum of the fridge filling the room. The clock on the wall ticked past 11:30 p.m., and outside the neighborhood was silent, except for the occasional car passing by on the main road a block away. That's when the knocking began. It wasn't a polite tap like a neighbor dropping off mail or a solicitor with flyers. It was urgent, almost frantic. 3 sharp knocks, then a pause, then 3 more. I wiped my hands on a dish towel, my heart picking up speed for no apparent reason. Who knocks this late? I turned on the porch light and peered through the peephole, but the angle was off and all I could see was a shadowy figure. Taking a deep breath, I unlocked the door and opened it. The cool night air rushed in, carrying a faint scent of rain from earlier in the day. Standing there under the glow of my porch lights was Charlotte, my boss, the woman who'd been on my mind for the past 2 years without me ever admitting it out loud. She was 38, sharp and composed as always. But tonight, something was different. She wore a deep blue dress that fit her perfectly, with a thin cardigan draped over her shoulders like she'd just come from somewhere formal. Her brown eyes looked tired, rimmed with a hint of redness, and her lips trembled slightly as she clutched her keys in one hand. Her dark hair, usually pinned back neatly at the office, fell loose around her face, and she shifted her weight from one foot to the other as if deciding whether to leave. Before I could even say something like, "Charlotte, what are you doing here?" she stepped forward, brushing past me into the kitchen without waiting for an invitation. The door clicked shut behind her, and she collapsed onto one of the wooden chairs at my small table, her shoulders slumping as if she'd been holding herself together by sheer will until that moment. She dropped her keys on the table with a clatter, and for a second, she just sat there staring at the floor. I stood frozen in the doorway, my mind racing. Charlotte was my direct supervisor, the head of the creative department, brilliant, no-nonsense, the kind of woman who commanded a room without raising her voice. I'd admired her from day one, the way she encouraged me through my first big project, how she'd slip out to the office balcony for a quick smoke during stressful days, her laugh that cut through the tension in meetings. But it was more than that. I'd fallen for her. The quiet loneliness I sensed in her eyes when everyone else had gone home. The way she brushed off advances from other guys in the office with a polite but firm smile. She was out of my league, older, more experienced, and my boss. I convinced myself it was just a crush, something I'd never act on. Now here she was in my kitchen looking vulnerable in a way I'd never seen. She lifted her head, her eyes locking onto mine with an intensity that made my stomach twist. "I'm done pretending, Liam," she said, her voice low and hoarse, like she'd been holding back tears. "You're the one I want. I don't want to hide it anymore. I want to stay here tonight." The words hit me like a freight train, knocking the air out of my lungs. My mouth went dry, and 1,000 thoughts exploded in my head at once. Was this real? Had I misheard? Charlotte, my boss, the woman I daydreamed about but never dared approach, wanting me, shattered every barrier I'd built. The age gap, the power dynamic, the professional lines we'd both respected. I remember the first time I'd felt that pull toward her during a late-night team meeting 2 years ago. She'd stayed behind to help me refine a pitch, her hand brushing mine as she pointed to the screen. And in that moment, I'd seen past the tough exterior to the woman underneath. Strong but carrying something heavy. Over time, I'd caught glimpses. Her skipping office parties. The way she'd stare out the window during breaks. The subtle sadness when someone mentioned family. I'd loved her from afar, convincing myself it was impossible. I didn't say anything at first. Instead, I moved to the stove, filling the kettle with water and grabbing a mug from the cabinet. "Tea?" I asked, my voice steadier than I felt. She nodded, her fingers fiddling with one of her rings. As the water heated, I sat down across from her, the table between us feeling both too small and too vast. She slipped off a couple of rings, placing them beside her keys, and let out a long sigh. "Rough night?" I asked softly, not pushing, but letting her know I was there. She nodded again, her eyes glistening. "Yeah, you could say that." The kettle whistled, and I poured the hot water over a bag of ginger tea, sliding the mug toward her. She wrapped her hands around it, the steam rising between us, and for the first time that night, she looked a little less on edge. We sat in silence for a moment, the clock ticking softly on the wall, and I realized this was it. The night that would change everything, whether we were ready or not. I had no idea what came next, but as I watched her take that first sip, I knew one thing. The walls between us had crumbled, and there was no going back. She nodded, her fingers tightening around the mug as if it was the only thing grounding her. The steam curled up between us, carrying the faint spice of ginger. And for a moment, the kitchen felt even smaller, more intimate than it had ever been. I didn't push her to talk. I'd learned from years of quiet evenings alone that sometimes silence was the best invitation. But Charlotte didn't need prompting. After a few sips, she set the mug down and leaned back in the chair, her eyes drifting to the window where the porch lights cast a soft glow against the dark night. "It was supposed to be just dinner," she started, her voice barely above a whisper, laced with exhaustion. "My brother set it up. Another one of his helpful blind dates. He's been pushing me toward these guys for the past 2 years, ever since the divorce. This one was some executive from a tech firm downtown, the kind of man who thinks a fancy restaurant and a bottle of overpriced wine make him irresistible." She let out a bitter laugh, shaking her head. The place was beautiful. Linen tablecloths, candlelight, views of the city skyline. But from the moment we sat down, it was all wrong. He talked nonstop about his portfolio, his vacation home in Aspen, his latest car, a Tesla, of course, and then he started in on me. I watched her closely, noting the way her jaw tightened, how her hands clenched into loose fists on the table. Charlotte had always seemed unbreakable at work, the one who steered our team through tight deadlines and client meltdowns without flinching. Seeing her like this, raw, unguarded, stirred something deep in me, a mix of protectiveness and ache. He said women like me in our mid-30s should be thinking about settling down, she continued, her tone sharpening with sarcasm. "Stop chasing promotions. Find a stable guy. Maybe pop out a kid or two before it's too late." He even joked about how I probably spend too much time with those young creatives at the office, like it was some kind of warning, as if I'm just playing at my career, waiting for the right man to come along and rescue me. She paused, her eyes meeting mine, and I saw the hurt flicker there, mingled with defiance. I sat there, nodding politely at first, but inside it was like everything I'd been holding back just boiled over. The divorce wrecked me. 2 years of therapy, rebuilding my life, proving to myself I didn't need anyone to define me. And this guy, this stranger, reduces it all to some outdated script. I reached across the table then, my hand hovering for a second before gently covering hers. Her skin was cool from the night air, and I felt a slight tremor in her fingers. It was the first time I touched her like that beyond a casual handshake at work, and the contact sent a quiet jolt through me. She didn't pull away. Instead, she turned her palm up, interlacing our fingers just a bit, as if testing the fit. "I couldn't take it anymore," she said, her voice dropping even lower. Halfway through the main course, I excused myself, said I wasn't feeling well, and left. Walked out into the street, hailed a cab, and just drove. No destination at first. The driver asked where to, and I mumbled something about heading east toward the suburbs. We circled the city a few times, past the office building where we work, the park where I sometimes eat lunch alone, and then without really thinking, I gave him your address. I don't even know how I remembered it. Maybe from that team-building event last year when we all shared our emergency contacts. Her words hung in the air, heavy with implication. Why me? Of all the places she could have gone, friends, family, even back to her own apartment, why here? I squeezed her hand lightly, encouraging her to go on, but inside my mind was reeling. I'd replayed scenarios like this in my head 100 times, confessing how I felt, imagining her reaction, but never like this. Never with her showing up at my door, vulnerable and bold all at once. By the time the cab pulled up, she went on. I was shaking. Part of me wanted to tell the driver to keep going, but I couldn't. I've been pretending for so long. Strong at work, composed in meetings, brushing off every advance like it doesn't faze me. But tonight it all cracked. I realized I don't want that life anymore. The loneliness, the expectations, the facade. And you, Liam, you've always seen through it, haven't you? The way you look at me in the office, like you get it without me having to explain. I swallowed hard, my thumb tracing a small circle on the back of her hand. I felt it too, I admitted, my voice rough. Loving you from a distance, thinking it was impossible. You're my boss. You're older. You're everything I'm not. But yeah, I've seen the loneliness. It's the same one I carry since my parents died. And tonight, when you said those words at the door, it broke something in me, too. In a good way. She looked at me then. Really looked. Her eyes searching mine as if confirming what she'd hoped. A small smile tugged at her lips, the first real one I'd seen that night. And she leaned forward slightly. I know this could blow up. Gossip at work. Judgment from everyone. I'm 38. You're 26. People will talk. But I don't care anymore. I want to be honest with myself for once. If that means risking it all, then I'm ready. We sat like that for what felt like hours, hands linked across the table, the tea cooling untouched. No kisses, no rushed embraces, just the quiet weight of two people who'd been orbiting each other for years finally colliding. The clock ticked on, marking the minutes past midnight. And in that silence, I felt a shift. This wasn't just a confession. It was the start of something real, fragile, but undeniable. As the night deepened, I realized our connection wasn't fleeting. It was the kind of bond that came from shared scars, the kind that could either heal us or break us wide open. And in that moment, I knew I was willing to find out which. The morning light filtered through the thin curtains in my kitchen, casting a soft, golden haze over everything. I woke up on the couch where I'd insisted Charlotte take my bed. Nothing had happened beyond that quiet conversation the night before, but the air still felt charged, like the world had tilted slightly off its axis. I could hear faint sounds from the kitchen, the clink of a pan, the hiss of the coffee maker. Rubbing my eyes, I sat up and patted over, the wooden floor cool under my feet. Charlotte was already there, moving with that familiar efficiency I'd seen in the office, but softer now, more at home. She'd borrowed one of my old button-up shirts, the sleeves rolled up to her elbows, and it hung loosely over her frame, making her look both vulnerable and impossibly real. She was flipping eggs in a skillet, over easy from the looks of it, and toasting bread in the ancient toaster I'd inherited from my parents. The smell of fresh coffee filled the room, grounding me in the moment. She glanced over her shoulder as I entered, offering a small smile that didn't quite hide the shadows under her eyes. "Morning," she said, her voice steady but warm. "I hope you don't mind," she said, having rummaged through the fridge to whip up some breakfast after last night. I shook my head, settling into a chair. "Not at all. It smells wonderful." We didn't exchange many words initially, just the comforting routine of setting plates and pouring coffee into mismatched cups. She placed a plate before me, eggs, toast, with butter slowly melting on top. Simple yet considerate. As we ate, the silence extended, not uncomfortable, but laden with unspoken questions. Did she regret coming here? Would she leave now that daylight had stripped away the night's spontaneity? And what about work? How would we interact in meetings after this? Eventually, she set her fork down and met my eyes. "We need to be wise about this, Liam," she said, her tone shifting to the decisive one I recognized from boardrooms. "No sneaking around. It'll only harm us in the long run. Trust issues, paranoia, all of it. I've seen it ruin people." I nodded, swallowing a bite of toast that suddenly felt dry. "I understand. But how? You're my boss. People will notice." She leaned in, her fingers tracing the edge of her mug. "I'll recommend transferring you to the advanced creative team. You've got the skills for it. I've seen your work on those high-profile pitches. You'd report to Marcus instead of me. It's not favoritism. It's sensible. Protects us. And honestly, it'd be beneficial for your career. You deserve to go beyond the basics." The suggestion hit me with a mix of relief and anxiety. The advanced team handled larger clients, more innovative projects. It was a step up I dreamed of but never pursued. However, it also meant change, scrutiny. "Are you sure? I don't want it to seem like I'm getting special treatment." She interrupted gently. "It won't. Your portfolio speaks for itself, and if anyone questions it, we'll address it directly. But Liam, this isn't just about work. I want us to have a real chance without the power imbalance overshadowing us." Her words settled something in me, a quiet determination. She wasn't treating this like a fling. She was thinking long-term, maturely. I reached for her hand again like I had the night before, and this time it felt more natural. "Okay, let's do it." The following weeks passed in a whirlwind. Charlotte arranged the transfer smoothly, a quick meeting with HR, a nod from upper management based on my recent contributions. Suddenly, I was diving into larger campaigns, collaborating with senior designers on concepts that genuinely excited me. The work was intense, with longer hours and tighter deadlines, but it pushed me in ways my old role never had. I thrived on it, channeling my energy into proving I belonged there, not just because of her. But the whispers began almost immediately. In the break room, I'd overhear snippets. "Heard Liam's close with Charlotte. Must be why he got promoted." Or during a team lunch, a colleague leaned in with a smirk. "Close with the boss, huh? Spill the details." I brushed it off with a laugh, saying things like, "Nah, just respect her work ethic." But inside, it gnawed at me. The doubt, the assumption that I hadn't earned it. Charlotte faced it too, though she hid it better. One evening, she showed up at my door later than usual, her shoulders tense, eyes rimmed with fatigue. She'd driven straight from a client dinner, still in her work blazer. As soon as I closed the door behind her, she wrapped her arms around me, burying her face in my shoulder. I held her, feeling the subtle shake in her breath. "Rough day?" I asked, echoing my words from that first night. She pulled back slightly, nodding. "Partners grilling me about objectivity and staffing decisions." And then an email from HR, an anonymous complaint about potential favoritism. Her voice cracked on the last word, and tears welled up, spilling over before she could stop them. "I used to be so strong, Liam. Why do I feel so weak now? Like everything I've built could crumble because of us." Seeing her like that, the woman who'd mentored me, inspired me, broke something in me. I guided her to the couch, sitting beside her, my arm around her shoulders. "You're not weak," I said firmly. "You're human, and we're in this together. I'll prove them wrong. I'll show I deserve the spot. But you've got nothing to prove. Not to them, not to me." She leaned into me, her sobs quieting as I stroked her hair. In that moment, holding her through the storm, I realized this love wasn't just butterflies and stolen glances. It was responsibility, the kind that meant standing firm when the world pushed back, being her anchor as much as she was mine. We stayed like that for hours, talking through the doubts, planning how to navigate the gossip. By the time she fell asleep against me, I knew we'd face more, but I also knew I wouldn't let her do it alone. It belonged to us, brimming with laughter, gentle conversations, and the pure delight of returning to someone who truly understood you. We didn't require flawlessness or assurances. We possessed each other, sincere and genuine. Ultimately, that was more than sufficient to illuminate the path ahead.